All right. Hello there, friends. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining me today as we go through the book of Judges, or the book of Judges. You can see I'm all suited up today. I have a little bit of a work thing I got to do here in just a few minutes, but I wanted to hop on here and do this video with you before I went. So I decided, you know what? We can do a suit on YouTube. I think it fits, right? It's perfect. So we might as well do that today. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy these videos, give us a thumbs up. Of course, you can comment on these videos. I love to read your comments, and sharing this is a huge blessing to us, as well as subscribing. You can subscribe and you can click that bell icon to receive notifications when we go live. Today, we're continuing through the book of Judges, and we're getting into a longer narrative of one of the judges. So it's going to take us a few days, several days, to go through what we are discussing today, or what we're beginning today, and it's going to be really good to have this conversation today. But we're going to kind of open up this longer narrative with a conversation on consequence, which is really interesting, right? I was having a conversation yesterday with one of my children who had gotten in trouble and were feeling the consequences of their actions, and of course, what do you do whenever you get in trouble, and what do you do when there are consequences, especially when you have the mind of a child? Well, you blame the one who delivers the consequence, not yourself for receiving them, right? And so we were having that conversation last night about how Daddy is not the bad guy here, right? Daddy's just trying to make sure that you know that what you did was incorrect, and these consequences are a very real result of that. And so that's what we do. I had the same conversation earlier today, right? So consequence is something that I think humans struggle with, not just when they're children, but I think that humans struggle with the idea of consequence throughout the entirety of their life, and figuring out where those consequences come from. Because we like to believe, by and large, that we are good people. We like to believe, by and large, that we don't really do anything negative, but the reality is that all sin comes with, or brings with it, consequence. And so we're going to talk about that today. We're going to see that in a very real way as we talk about Midian and their oppression of Israel. So I'm going to be in Judges chapter 6. I'm going to start reading at verse 1, and you can follow along with me, and we'll go from there. This is what it says. It says, "The people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian 7 years." I want to really clarify here. One of the reasons that I wanted to go through the book of Judges together is I wanted to discuss, where does like whatever you're facing, right, as a group of people, is in many times a direct regard of your relationship or not with the Lord, right? Of how people are treating the relationship with the Lord. And it is up to the Lord to decide who is in control at any given moment of our daily comings and going, of our daily lives. And so I want you to notice there, the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian for 7 years. Israel, as the church at that time, Israel would have felt like, had they had the opportunity to have a voice in their leadership, they would have stood up and said that these Midianites stand in opposition with God, and they don't want what's best for humanity, and da 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 da. But the reality is that the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian for 7 years. Why? Because the beginning of verse 1 tells us the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. More of life than we realize, church, is a result of our doing what is right or what is not right in the sight of the Lord. I think it's really important for us to remember that. Verse 2, "And the hand of Midian overpowered Israel, and because of Midian, the people of Israel made for themselves the dens that are in the mountains and the caves and the strongholds." Now, this is really interesting, right? This is like the first storm shelters or the first war bunkers, right? The Midianites are so militant against Israel that the Israelites are like building these shelters, these fallout shelters in the caves and the holes in the cliffs there in the mountains, because the Midianites are coming through and they're just like brutally attacking the Israelites. It says they even attacked their crops. Verse 3, whenever the Israelites planted crops, the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them, and they would encamp against them, and they would devour the produce of the land as far as Gaza, and leave no sustenance in Israel, and no sheep or ox or donkey. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents, and they would come like locusts in number. Both they and their camels could not be counted, so that they laid waste the land as they came in. And Israel was brought very low because of Midian, and the people of Israel cried out for help to the Lord. Now, this is interesting, right? This is, once again, the consequence of Israel's action. That Israel has chosen to live their life in opposition with God, and so they found themselves fighting against him, right? And so what happened? God delivered them into the hand of Midian, and the Midianites and the Amalekites and all of these people from the east, they were brutal towards them, right? And so Israel, like, is really dwindling down. Like, I read this even as it says that Israel was brought very low. I read that not only in spirit, but also in number. I think that people are dying. They're starving. Like, poverty is among them, right? There's no way for them to make a life. Their livestock, their flocks, their farms, everything is being completely and utterly devastated. And sometimes I think that God has to bring people and also humanity down to its lowest lows, as a consequence of what they've done, so that they will eventually turn from their action against him, right, and turn to him. And that's exactly what's happening here. God is bringing Israel down about as low as he can bring them. And finally, in verse 6, the people of Israel cry out to the Lord. Now, when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord on account of the Midianites, in verse 8 says, the Lord sent a prophet to the people of Israel, and he said to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel. This is, I think, this is the second time God speaks through a prophet, and I believe it's the last time that God will speak through a prophet in the book. The Lord sent a prophet to the people of Israel, and he said to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I led you up from Egypt, and I brought you out of the house of slavery, and I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you, and gave you their land. In other words, don't be mad at me. I've given you every opportunity here, right? Like, every time you've needed me, I have been there. Every time you've needed deliverance, I have been your deliverer. I have been with you this whole time. My position has not changed. It's yours that has changed, right? I've done all these things. Verse 10, and I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice. And what God is saying here is, listen, guys, this consequence is now yours. You don't want to find yourself in a place where you cry out to God, and God's messenger or God's voice comes and says, wait a minute. Let's remember all of the great things I've done for you. And let's remember that I told you not to do what you did. And let's remember that you did what I told you not to do. Like, God doesn't really offer them any peace in this instance, right? He doesn't really tell them that he's going to change things for them. Like, life is not going to be different for them in accordance to what this prophet is saying. Like, there really isn't any hope for Israel at this point. I want you to feel that. The reason why I don't want to continue in the text, the reason why I want to break it there, is because I want you to feel the weight that Israel would have felt in this moment. They're being attacked. They're literally being killed off one by one. Those that aren't being killed off are starving because they don't have any crops and they don't have any animals, any livestock. They're hiding themselves in caves and in cliffs in the mountains because they're so afraid of the people that live around them. And they're calling out to God out of their fear. And God is saying, listen, you chose this. I didn't choose this for you. You chose this. It's what you get. I want you to feel that today, because on the day that they would have had that message delivered to them, all hope would have been lost in Israel. all hope would have been lost. Thankfully, in New Testament Christianity, we know that all hope is not lost. In fact, the greatest victory that has ever been won has been won for us through the person of Jesus Christ, through his death on the cross, through his resurrection, through his promise to us of new life, through the working of his church, who are led by his Spirit to proclaim his good news all across this earth. We know that all hope is not lost, but they did not. I want you to set for a day in the feeling that they would have felt whenever God said to them, remember all those good things I did for you, and remember how you left me. This is where you are. I love you guys. If you find these videos helpful, give me a thumbs up. Maybe leave a comment. I love to read your comments. Obviously, our biggest help comes whenever you subscribe to the channel, and of course, you can click the bell icon to receive notifications. And our other huge amount of help comes whenever you find somebody that you think would love this video and you share it with them. That's a huge blessing to us. That's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow. See you then. Bye.